Welcome back to another fantastic and long-awaited episode of Pike on Air. Yes, my name is Pike and I'm the one that is on air for you tonight as we break down the latest and greatest up-and-coming for O's. The man who's seen more teams come through than we could ever fathom or believe. Man that, let's just say, is bringing sexy back. Of course, it is the man from PCS. It is our boy Vestion. Mate, how are you doing this fine evening? You're looking good in that studio.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, doing very well, and especially better now after that introduction. I might have to get you to write a few lines for the old Tinder profile after that one. That was insane.
Mate, I wing those every time. I never write it down. I'm just like, let's just see what we can get. And I was thinking about it on the train today. I was like, bringing sexy back. That's Vestion right there. Has to be.
Damn.
100%. It was too easy almost. But mate, how are you doing tonight? The one thing I love to get my guests to start off with is tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm doing well today, of course. I've done a bunch of filming here in relation to the PCS playoffs and what's going on there. But, I mean, I'm Vestion. I'm the play-by-play caster and host of the PCS English broadcast. I've been doing it now for 2 years. I've actually, I think, a bit of an accolade that I've casted every single game for over the past year now, which I think is not something that many people around the world can say. And I'm very proud to represent the region that I am representing. I'm obviously came in when LCO started to come in as well, so it was kind of perfect timing, being that, I represent the PCS, but I'm from Oceania, so I'm able to sort of try and remain unbiased in that regard, as I want to see both sides succeed, and I kind of get a win-win situation in many regards. But yeah, just a big fan of LoL Esports in general, bigger fan of PCS in specific, and yeah, just very happy to be here.
Mate, well, I love it. I love having you. We've been talking about this for a while because we've been quite good friends for quite a long time too. And I've been like, we just got to get you on, man. And now that playoffs are coming, we were like, let's just get it done. You're in studio. Makes a lot of sense. But let's take a step back though, because I want to know a little bit more about you. Tell us about your league journey, right? Like, where did you start with league to up until right now?
Yeah, so I started playing League at the back end of Season 2. I can't remember what champ first came out at the time, like many people are able to. But yeah, that was when I did begin playing League of Legends. I was introduced to it by a bunch of my high school friends, and it kind of stuck. Pretty much played it religiously. I had a break at one stage from PUBG, but basically I got really into it back when I was 18, which, well, I mean, maybe 16 until I was 18 was kind of when I was at the peak of being into it, excluding now. And at that time, I actually took a very vested interest in sort of doing some sort of like coaching. I wasn't challenger by any regards back then. I was usually around master and diamond, and I took that time, and I was part of a little organization that was called Alpha Sydney at the time. They were competing in like the OCS and the OOL. I was actually Shock's coach, which is how I was first introduced to Shock, and formed a very good relationship with him, and kind of through that was able to continue down my league journey until eventually he was doing the PCS. They wanted someone else, and then he invited me along here. So that's kind of how I got started into league, through passion, kept playing it through friendship, was able to find a role here.
You know, that's the funniest thing, right? I think that's the one takeaway that I've learned on my own journey too, is it's all about the people you just meet along the way. And I think you've had that's the perfect example for you. Like, you met Shocks, you were coaching a bunch of people, you get to know people playing, and then you're like, like, that sounds like fun. Like, you said, like, I'll dip my toe a little bit. Yeah. And now you find yourself heading up the PCS, the head honcho himself, looking so good while you're doing it as well. Now, I want to talk about, how did you get into casting? So it's like, again, we're both casters, and I haven't had many casters on the show. So maybe break it down for people who might want to get into it a little bit more and talk us through your journey there.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, obviously I've looked a lot into League of Legends throughout just all my time of playing it, and again, spent a little bit of the time coaching. And so I have a pretty good knowledge on the game, how the game should be played. I watch a lot of LoL Esports to begin with, and I have joy in listening to casts and whatnot, and always felt like it would be something I'm pretty decent at doing if I gave it a shot. And honestly, it's basically, I think, down to sort of my personality in many ways. Like, I love to talk, love the sound of my own voice, all that good stuff. I'm pretty capable of holding a conversation, as well as public speaking's never been something I particularly worry about. And so it kind of all made sense. I never really figured, like, how would I ever find an opportunity to do that? Like, I never knew where to start. And that, again, is sort of where, Shock came in. He was doing the match fix, he was making music videos, he got the opportunity to do this, and it just so happened that they needed someone else, and I was just lucky enough, really. Right place, right time. It's kind of how a lot of things happen in life, you just got to be in the right place, right time, but it ultimately sees that opportunity and, got the opportunity, and I really just wanted to put my all into it, and that's what I've done, and I think I've done a pretty good job at both running away with it, but honestly, most importantly, I think I've improved a lot, and that's sort of how you got to look at it when you first come in.
Mate, I'm not going to say you've done a pretty good job. I'm going to say you've done an excellent job. So don't sell yourself too short there, my friend. I think you've been doing so well over there. You guys have been putting on a great show, and the talent there as well. Not just like you guys and Lo. It's the players too. Like all the players over in PCS, they're looking so good. And I definitely want to talk about them a little bit later on. But again, I want to talk more about you. This is finding out who Vestion is before we head into PCS and get into the playoffs and all that sort of stuff. So tell us, did you ever have dreams of being a pro player? Or were you just sort of like, look, it was fun coaching?
Yeah, I guess when I was younger, I could say that I had dreams of being a pro player. Never to the point where I'd be willing to sort of sacrifice my social life in many ways, because I'm quite an extroverted person, and so getting time to go out, meet my friends, be it have a drink. It used to be like playing basketball or just whatever, hanging out at a mall, just being a delinquent at the age of 16 was kind of something I valued a lot. And when I was younger, it'd be like, man, it'd be cool for my job to just be playing games. But as I thought about it and as I sort of grew up, it was like, well, I don't know that I'd really be able to, whether it be mentally or just maybe emotionally, mentally, however you want to word it, I don't think I'd be able to necessarily cope with, committing however many hours, 12 hours a day to just queuing up League of Legends, be it solo queue or scrims. And so the coaching role, when I first did it, felt like it fitted pretty well, because as long as I'm there, go over the scrims, spend some of my free time when, late at night watching LCK, LPL and stuff, that works well. And then there's a few days where I don't necessarily have to just be fully committed to the game, especially at that time. League was kind of in an infant state. It was like season 4, 5 or 6, something like that. Wasn't that as developed as it is now. There was like, Korea was really good. And I was only coaching for an amateur team, which I tried my absolute best, but coming into it new, I never really felt like I needed to commit too much of my free time. Like I felt like there was a good balance of focusing on school, being able to socialize, and also do something that I really enjoyed doing at the same time. And I think that was a good sort of medium ground for me. And pro play would have probably been too much of a time committal.
And I guess, how did your coaching sort of move into your casting now? Because obviously they are quite similar roles, but there's definitely some big differences there. Do you think your coaching experience really led the way to being a top-tier caster?
I think in many ways it did. The main connection, I should say, between the two, I think, is just analyzing the game, looking at what's happening on your screen and being able to sort of see what will come, what each team's sort of thinking in the moment, what they thought when they made a mistake or what they thought when they made a big play, whichever way it goes. And I think a lot of like the coaching, the experience I had from coaching, from watching players like, Shock and the rest of Alpha Sydney Academy at the time were doing, led me to be able to learn a lot about, reading the map, reading the game, understanding how a draft works, what teams are thinking going into draft, how to analyze that myself, and using then language skills that I'd picked up, whether it be through school or just whatever, growing up, socializing, to then convey my thoughts into words as neatly and concise as possible. So I think it's sort of just a lot of it, personality, but definitely like spending time analyzing the game. I don't think I could do what I do now if I hadn't have spent that time actually trying to learn how to analyze League of Legends.
Okay. That's really interesting, because I had a bit of a different journey, but I love your side where you feel like you've taken a lot of what you have learned and you've just sort of not twisted it, but you've moved it in a slight direction and it's altered the course, right? And I think that's a big thing. So I guess my question following up from that is, how do you actually sort of do, I guess, prepare for a cast? Like, do you have like a bit of a ritual that you have where like you go and research the teams? Do you research the players? Do you look at statistics? Like what does your pre-show look like?
Yeah, okay. So generally what happens here, and we kind of do lots of things as a group, obviously when the show's getting set up, we'll have production, they're setting up all the lights, and we get our makeup done by Larissa and stuff. So that's all part of it. Gets us into a good mindset, honestly, like making sure we're coming on looking presentable, Larissa is our assistant producer here. She does all of our makeup as well. And I think, well, it's only light, it's like a foundation. I don't know what the makeup's called, but it gives you a sense of confidence, right? Like you're coming in, you know that you're looking about as good as you ever could. And so that gives you confidence just as like a personal level. In terms of like looking at the game or whatnot, I often spend time, even at home, like the day before, be like 3 days before a cast, I'll go onto Deep LOL, I'll look up the players' OPGGs, and you can kind of see what each player is playing. And admittedly, this split's been a bit stale. Like everyone's kind of just playing the same rough amount of champions, like AP junglers, AD mids, a tank top. That sort of, you get the gist of it there. But generally, I look up their solo queue accounts, see how they're doing, if they're doing bad, if they're on a slump, if they're doing well, if they're playing something unique. And then moreover than that, if it's a repeat matchup like we often have, I'll look over what the result of the last time they went up against each other was, have a look, and because I need to like sort of remember what happened, and looking at the scoreboard is kind of the easiest way, otherwise everything sort of meshes into one. You go look at the scoreboard, you can clearly see like where the advantage will gain. It'll sort of re-jog my memory. If I need to, I can go back watch the VODs. Generally I don't really need to, because again, I cast every single game, so I've watched every single game. But just it's important, I think, to go over the history of the teams. Have they been slumping recently against other teams? That's something that's true for CFO. They'll come in really hot, start slumping. Can we find a reason? Solo queue again can help with that. Just going through their VODs and getting home and thinking about it. Me and Lo talk about it extensively, whether it be at the studio or at home in Discord while we're playing ranked flex queue games or whatever it may be. So it's just a lot of just more so than intentionally going out of my way to prepare. A lot of it actually just comes from me just having so much love for the region that I just end up talking about it out of joy, like more so than anything. So while obviously if I need to, I'll put in the prep work as work, but it never truly feels like work. It's just something I enjoy doing. So it kind of comes as a hobby almost.
If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, is what they say, Ben. It's what they say, and I believe it too. I think that's what a great, like, you literally get to sit there and talk about your favorite game with some of your favorite people and just talk absolute smack about it and just be like, well, that player shouldn't have dove 1v4 into that. What a monkey. And you're just like, oh shit. You get to say that sort of stuff, right? Like it's like the dream job. And I guess I could say that too because now I'm there. So it's always nice. And now I feel like we're properly peers because I feel like before I was sort of like, man, like I'd love some feedback. I'd love some help. And now you're just like, Pike, I got nothing for you, bro. And I'm like, I got nothing for you, man. Like we're chilling. But okay.
Yeah, no, you're doing really well.
We're here. Right, we're at the precipice of a golden age, I might even say, because you mentioned actually before that the early days of League, right? You mentioned that sort of like season 2, season 3 when you started was like the early days. I like to see League as like dog and cat years, is how I'm going to put it, but it's slightly changed, right? I'm going to say like the first like beta to like season 3 is probably going to be like they're like sort of like a 6 month to a 1 year old, right? And then every 3 years after that, that's 1 year again. That's sort of how I see it. So we're sort of like at a 4 or 5 year old right now. The game is still so young. It's still sort of like in the whole world of esports. Esports is a baby too. We're trying to figure out where that is. And I think this leads me into APAC. And I want to talk about APAC first before we go into PCS, because we can talk PCS a bunch, because I've got LCO teams in there, you've got some star teams in there too, and we can break those down even more. But again, it's about you and your experience with them, but I want to talk about APAC. What are your hopes for that? And give us maybe your rundown of what you think that's going to look like.
Yeah, so my hopes leading into APAC ultimately is I think all of the best players should be representing the teams, right? Because right now, you could put in an org, whatever orgs, choose 8 orgs and from a combination of the regions, put them in. That's cool. Like, they're probably going to be orgs that deserve it, some very prestigious orgs from each of the regions. And I think those are the orgs that should go in. But ultimately, there is some really, really good talent on teams that aren't part of those orgs that have just such notoriety, right? And it would be, to me, the absolute biggest shame is having a bunch of orgs that are really big names and having some of these like up-and-coming rookie players that truly have such a promising career ahead of them miss out because of this whole combination of the regions. And I'm not only like talking about the rookies that I know from the PCS. There's some really star-studded players from every region, be it the LJL, the LCO, and the VCS, that there is a big chance that they get left behind, and they could be in that second tier seed, right? Like how the LCO, the PCS, the LJL, and the VCS are all going to still exist as tier 2 play, which is kind of how they exist now. But the problem is that they're going from the focus of those are the premier leagues in each region, right? Right now, they are. Even if like we're technically minor regions, they're still the premier leagues. They're no longer going to be that. And so it's going to mean that this APAC region comes in. It takes eyes away from these players. And admittedly, I'm sure within the teams, there'll be scouts, coaches, managers, analysts that will be able to see them. But it's going to be a lot harder than when there's just a Twitch chat going wild because this one rookie made the play of a career. And it's like, wow, that's really noticeable. That can truly make your career. That can get you this place on a big team like PSG, Talon, or whoever you want to say. And getting eyes off of those players is going to make it a lot harder to break into the scene. It's going to have to be more of a team effort where you're getting through that relegation, making it into the APAC league where you can finally get eyes on you. And I do worry mostly about teams getting left behind. But I think on the other side of the coin, the competition should just be really, really tough at the top. That means any player that's in there is going to be able to improve tenfold the amount they are at the moment. So it's kind of, the winning win more. What is the saying? The rich get richer, essentially, is what I'm getting to.
I'm actually I agree very strongly. Like I would say 100% I agree with everything you said. I think the way I perceive how APAC's going to run, and you mentioned it so eloquently, is where you said that like the top players will make it there. And I think that's almost what we've sort of needed, because whenever people have come up, especially I can talk from the LCO OS side specifically, is like, how do we get OS into Worlds? Like that's the big question everyone keeps asking. How do we get through PCS? And everyone's just like, what if we just had a dream team? What if we just got the best players in every role, slap them together, put them in there and see what happens? That's sort of what I feel like APAC's going to be almost for OS, where it feels like it does give the star names a chance. Yes, it's harder to get there, but if you get LCO, that's your time to actually say, okay, now's the time. Same with PCS, same with LJL, same with VCS. Is like, okay, we get the best players we can get, put them onto rosters where they work. It's now up to those players to prove why they should be there. And what I'm really excited for, and this is something that I probably haven't really mentioned to anyone, is I think it opens up that it's not just about the game anymore. It is so much more about who you are as a player, how well you can mesh with other players, what your brand is as well. Like, I think that's such a big thing that they haven't really talked about, and especially APAC, is like, you go over to NA, you go over to EU, you go over any of those regions, they have to live stream, they have to have social media presence. There needs to be a whole nother step above if they want to cut it. I feel like that's what APAC's going to bring, and it's going to force a lot of these players, especially rookie players, to be like, okay, if I need to be there, I need to have X amount of followers. I need to be streaming X amount of time. And I've always seen that as a sort of like our solution to a lot of problems is if you just have a presence, people come and watch you. It boosts viewership. It makes sense. It's literally maths. So again, that's a whole nother story. But I think that's what I love about APAC is it's opening up a whole new system that we don't know yet. So the possibilities are really strong. But it also does make it seem a lot harder. But I feel like if I focus on the good rather than the bad, good things will come.
Yeah, manifest essentially, right? Is if you can just try and stay positive about it, and ultimately, if we're not staying positive about it, it's going to mean that we go into it feeling negative and probably putting in less effort than we would otherwise. It's just the world's our oyster at this stage. If the APAC region comes to fruition, we can see some really amazing plays and ultimately give the entire region a better chance to level up and start competing at the World Championships with the likes of, the BLGs, the Gen Gs of the world. And I think already, obviously, the last MSI, we already saw that there is that in it, right? Like PSG Talon went to 5 games against BLG. Imagine if we had a year of just even better practice. That could have just been PSG's series, and whoever ends up representing this APAC region as the international competition happens in 2025, it's going to make it way more interesting, I think, and a lot more eyes will have to be on these APAC teams because there could be upsets. I think also one thing I didn't mention, by the way, just really quickly, is it also opens up the opportunity for cross-region plays because everyone is just, teams, because everyone's just going to be the same region. There's no, like, you're not, if you're an LCO team and you get a Vietnamese player, it's the same region. You don't need to get new, residencies, or that's not an imported player. You are the same region. So you could possibly have teams that are like partly made of current PCS members, current LCO members, VCS, LJL, whatever combination. There can be some really strong lineups of a mixed group of people. And as long as they can mesh well, then we could see like, a next really all-star team.
You literally read my mind, I'm pretty sure. And so get out of my brain, please, because I'm the one asking you questions. You hit the note, right? Is what does it look like when all these regions who do also speak other languages start to come together? Because you got Japanese, you got Vietnamese, you got English, you got players who also speak Chinese. Like there's so much because our regions all coming together into this one sort of super server. Like, how would you see that plays out? Like, have you noticed any complications with that? Because I feel like from LCO where we do have a couple imports already, and it's a very English driven sort of demographic. But we have had players that struggle to sort of keep up, but they're exceptional players, but they struggle to keep up with team comms, and I think that's a big hindrance for a lot of teams. Do you see that being an issue?
Yeah, so I think in the future it could be the current PCS sort of environment. There's only one singular import in the entire league, and that is Gory. Outside of him, there's not a single import, which just goes to show the strength of the region. But I think, as you said, when all these regions come together, there's a very realistic chance where one of the Vietnamese AD carries or whoever you want to say, or Evie even gets picked up by a roster from the PCS or a roster from the VCS or LJL or whatever, LCO, all of them, same thing. It could be cross-region teams, and I think you probably, this probably sucks for LCO, but the majority of the region doesn't speak English, you know? I think the majority of the fan base, the majority of the players that are in who you'd tout as the best players in the region are speaking Mandarin and Vietnamese, which is going to make it hard. Now, there is an exception, like Maple speaks English, spent time over at NA. You got Jimian on Frank Esports, also speaks English. Most of Frank Esports actually speaking English. So there is definitely people in the PCS that can come together with LCO players that they do speak English. And I'm sure there's some LCO players that probably speak Mandarin. There's probably some that speak Vietnamese as well. And so there's the opportunity for that to happen. But in general, I feel like it's going to be a very tough ask to try and get someone that only speaks Vietnamese to play with someone that only speaks Japanese. And there's no way to truly, I guess, communicate, because it's pretty easy in the game to communicate, right? In League of Legends, you can say warding, Baron in 1 minute, whatever it is, like whichever language, very
Question
easy.
marks permanently.
Yeah, but where it comes into difficulty is in practice. You go to a scrim, you can converse perfectly fine in game, get to game when you're trying to break down what's happened, and all of a sudden it kind of falls apart. So it's something that whoever's making these teams, the managers or if it's the coaches, they're going to have to be wary of. But I think in general, there's enough talent from each language pool that it probably shouldn't have to become an issue.
Yeah, I think the best thing that I took from that is that most teams, there is going to be such a difference, but I think because APAC will get that extra funding, there will be a little bit more support. I think there will be chances for those APAC teams to maybe be able to have someone there who's a bilingual person to help out on coaching staff. Like there is that chance where they're saying, okay, we've got so many different people, we need a way to connect them all. So I think that will be, hopefully, again, optimistic. I'm staying optimistic about it. Hopefully there will be something like that where we can have, even if there is that English broadcast that I know you and I are both so excited for, that could actually lead to, we have someone who's bilingual on that, and they are helping us communicate with these players, and they're introducing the story and giving them that narrative, because we've got such a rich culture of players. We want to hear their stories, and if we can't give them that light, it does make it a little bit harder. So I'm very keen for APAC. I think there's a lot going on for APAC. We'll just have to see how it's rolled out, because we're still very much, it feels like we're very in the dark with all the information we're given. We don't really know all that much. We're sort of just like, let's just get to Worlds and see what happens after that. But again, I'm liking, what do you think, actually, real quickly, what do you think about the 3 splits? Do you like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, really, to be honest, what to think about it, because it's like the 3 splits thing. It's like you see Europe do the 3 splits things, right? And looking at how the LEC looks, it doesn't seem like they're getting any better. In fact, it kind of oftentimes feels like the region is kind of going downhill in many ways. I wouldn't say they're like getting way worse or anything. Maybe it's more of a factor that other regions are catching up. But I feel like having the 3 splits, it also opens up more opportunity for roster swaps, which is probably not a good thing. In niche cases, it can be, but ultimately, I think if you give one team a whole year to play together rather than one split, we're going to drop this player, get a new player in, it's going to make it worse in the long run. And I'm not sure how capable a lot of teams are at seeing the longevity of just holding a roster together trying to make it work. If it doesn't work after a year, yep, we tried. That's fine. If you do it after one split, though, you never even really foster enough time to make it grow. So I'm hesitant on looking at it positive. Like, I want to see it before I make any concrete judgments, but I'm entirely basing it off just sort of how quick people are to make rash decisions in terms of their rosters, as well as how EU is kind of being caught up to by NA of late, as well as honestly just globally not as competitive against the Korean and the Chinese teams as they once were. So yeah, I'm a bit hesitant to like it, but again, I'm going to have to wait and see. It might just turn out perfectly fine.
Yeah, I guess now that it's sort of like Riot is controlling it all, and there is that standard across the entire world for like regions and stuff, I think that'll definitely help. But that's a whole nother conversation that we'll have to get into, because every region's being like, what are we actually doing? But that's okay. Now, Vestion, we have a fun little game. I like to put little games into my episodes because that's always a bit of fun to break it up. We don't have to talk League the whole time. So the first little segment I'm going to play is called Guess That Pro. Are you excited for Guess That Pro?
Okay. Yes.
This is a good one. All right, so we'll jump straight in. Who is that pro? Vestion, I've cut them down so you can only see just a portion of who they are. You can ask questions. I'll allow you to ask questions and get sort of like a vibe.
Is it from the LCO? Is this person from the LCO?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I've got my answer.
Yep.
It's Betty.
It is indeed Betty. How'd you get that?
Well, he's got a very unique look on his face always, and it's pretty much always that look. And I could see part of a Monster logo, and they're the only team with a Monster sponsor as well.
See, I was trying to be clever because I was like, oh, if I crop this side, it's got the MSI and stuff, and I was sort of like, I'll try and but the Monster look, you sneaky bugger. That's okay. You know what? Well done. That's big props. I wish I had my applause meter to give you a little cheeky shout out there, but well played. I thought I'd go for someone from your homegrown as PSG Talon player, star player there as well. When I looked up his stats, he's bloody. You know what? He's just bloody fucking good.
He is. The whole roster is completely insane. It is like ridiculous how much. Honestly, they've improved between spring and summer.
Yeah.
Maybe that 5-game series against BLG just lit a fire in them because they have looked completely unstoppable since that.
And that's why I'm a little bit nervous. So it's a nice little segue. I picked him for that nice little segue. So I was like, we won't talk about it just yet. We'll get into it later. Let's talk PCS. It's your bread and butter. Talk to us about these playoffs, man. Are you excited? 6 days, dude.
Yeah. So I am very excited. It's always very fun when the PCS playoffs, especially when it just starts, because we get our first look at truly how strong each region is in comparison to each other, right? And for me, like, I'm a pretty die-hard PCS fan at this point. I have to be, otherwise why would I be doing what I'm doing? And it's sort of like, I can tell PSG Talon are very good. How good are the rest of these teams? And you sort of get to find out when the LJL and the LCO come over, because now you're comparing it internationally instead of just domestically, because you watch every team, they go up against PSG Talon, they get completely smacked around in the exact same way. So it's like, well, I don't get to really see much out of this. I don't get to learn much. Now you got Ground Zero coming in. They have been just as dominant as PSG, dropping 1 game, if I remember correctly, the entire split.
Correct.
And it's like, how highly can I judge Ground Zero? Hard to tell, because they haven't been challenged in the LCO, right? They've never actually been challenged. They've just completely wiped the floor. So how strong truly are they in comparison to the PCS? Well, we get to find out now in the PCS playoffs, and they get to start up against J-Team, who they sometimes look very good and sometimes look very bad. It should be a good game. It should be the first time, I think, that we see the LCO actually win a series. I predict that Ground Zero should win that.
Yep.
And I think it's a very, very disappointing showing if they don't, and in all honesty. So I'm excited. I'm hesitantly confident. I have to say hesitant because ultimately, LCO have not yet won a series against a PCS team. So it's still like a barrier that has to be proven. It can be broken, but I feel like they have to be able to do it, man. And that's an exciting concept to be walking into, as well as we get to see just everyone, DFM coming over. They're such a historic org, and I get to cast their games. Like, what an honor that is, just to be part of that entire process. CFO, I get to keep casting Caster and Sword Art. Sword Art's been to a semi-finals of Worlds. Caster has won LPL a bunch of times. It's like, it's such an honor to be able to see international play before the rest of the world does.
It is nice, right? It always feels so good. Like, and I think you get the full amount of it too. Like, you are right there in the cusp of it, and you get to see it for the glory that it is live. And I'm probably sure that you guys have like a slight delay too, so you see it before everyone else. And you're just like, oh shit, that's blowing my mind. And that's what I loved about it. I was watching LCO 5 minutes before everyone else, and I was in like the Twitch chat, and I was like talking to people. I'm just like, oh yeah, nah, game's a bit of a wash. They're like, wait, what? I'm just like, yeah, it's a wash. And they're just like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't worry about it. 5 minutes later, big like pentakill. They're just like, oh, Pike, what the fuck? And I'm like, whoops, it's a bit of a wash, guys. Don't worry about it. But no, like I love that, man. Like it's a nice feeling. Hey, like you get to do something that's so exciting and gets people pumped up. Like, do you think? Okay, let's break it up a little bit bigger then, like APAC level, and then we'll bring it back down. Do you think PCS has a chance at a world title? This split.
World title.
There's some good teams out there.
Ultimately, do I think they have a chance?
Yeah.
I do. I'm going to sound delusional, but I do. Like we've just had it proven to us. Like straight in our face. BLG came second at MSI, and they almost they should have lost that game 4 where they were down 4K gold. It was one mistake of an engage that came through from Maple and Ginger that turned the entire game on its head. But they were one game away from being in the grand finals up against who was it? Gen G.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is not something that NA have ever been able to say since they won came second in the MSI a long time ago. Not something that Europe's been able to say since season 9 when it was G2 was in the finals. It's like, this is a region that is insanely good. Like, the talent is undeniable. Ginger's already been, like, as a substitute given, to a grand finals before of Worlds. He was in the winning team. It was RNG, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
No, he was JG's sub. So it was EDG. He's EDG.
Yeah. That would have been...
Oh, I can't remember now. But yeah, he was a sub for the roster that won Worlds. You know, that is like...
That would have been last year,
His experience behind them. No, this was 2020, I want to say.
I think it was 2020. Skins come out. I can tell you, like, when Worlds was won by a team, by the skin line that if you bring it up, I'm trying to remember EDG, which was the...
Yeah, it's like the Zoe. It's got Zoe in it. Kindred.
Aphelios.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the ones. I know the ones. That's the saddest part. We won't go that sad again. But okay, I love that. I think that's a big thing, right? Is that you got to back your region too, and I think that's why I'll harp on about LCO all day whenever I can, because yes, we don't have the greatest run in like international waters. But look, if you're going to be a pirate, you do need to sort of go out on your own and figure it out. You need to go test the waters a little bit. And I think that's a good thing, right? I think why APAC is going to be quite good is because now that it's all sort of coming together, this is sort of like OSA's last chance to really test their waters too. But like, at the same time, PCS is looking dominant. Like, you can't look past Talon. This team just is so dominant. Oyster as well has been playing really well. I'm curious to see how Bliss goes up against Frank. And I think I was watching you on Meander's podcast today, and I was watching a little bit, and I heard you guys talking about it. Are there any teams that we really need to watch? Like, is there any that you could tell us right now before next week that are like absolute, these are series you have to watch? Like, you know what? While you talk about it, I'm going to get up the PCS run.
Okay.
And then I'm going to just walk us through the games, and then you can just literally say, that's a good one. That's a bad one. Okay, I got it. Straight up. Okay. So DFM versus Whip. WP.
Probably should be just 2-0 for DFM.
Okay. Team Bliss versus Frank.
To be honest, I think it should be a 2-0 for Frank, but one thing about that series that is very exciting is that Hairi and Jimmy have actually played against each other before in NA challenges. So it's a known mid lane rivalry if you want to call it, because this was the split that TL Academy won the Challenger series over in NA. And Jimmy was on 100 Thieves Academy, which came second. And so Hairi has sort of bragging rights in that head-to-head there in that 1v1. But ultimately, I think Frank probably should be winning that. I mean, they've got Wako, who is one of the best 80 carries in the league. And Yi Jiang is phenomenal. Honestly, it's a very fun game to watch. And even if Bliss lose like pretty hard, which is kind of what I think. Like, I'm not trying to be rude here,
No,
but
no, no, no.
Frank
Again,
are
I
just
want
like,
candid. I want
yeah,
candid. You be honest.
yeah. Frank disappointed by going fourth. They should have
Yeah.
been contending second. They should have probably been able to get second based on CFO's performance, but unfortunately, with a few hiccups throughout the series, they weren't split. They weren't able to, and so I think they are. They are one of the contenders, I think, for going to Worlds. And so I don't really think Bliss have much of a chance, but it's certainly like the matchup between Jimmy and Harry should be very fun. Watching Jiang and Biopanther, who, by the way, Biopanther is one of the only people who can claim that they have hard carried a game in the PCS against a PCS team. He did that last year on Renekton. So it's like, he's able to do it in the PCS. If they're able to put two of those together, they've won the series. And so I think Jiang versus Biopanther can be very fun. It will depend, though. If Biopanther's playing tanks, I feel like it's going to be exploited. Jiang loves to play these bruisers into tanks, and he's very, very good at getting advantages through that. But if Biopanther's on his Renekton, which he hard carried last time, he certainly could look to do it again. So I think for that reason, this matchup can be fun, but I would go into it not with the most hopes for Bliss.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say, just because I have to be that diehard fan, I'm gonna say 2-1 to Bliss on that one. I think
I honestly think that's fair.
it could happen. There is a multiverse dimension where that happens. It could be 616, which is us right now, but who knows? We'll see what that looks like. All right. Oyster versus SG. That's August 6th.
So, yeah, I don't know the most about Sengoku Gaming, but I did talk to Molecule earlier today, and he had like very high praise to talk about them. He said their mid laner traditionally is very, very good, but he's been playing poorly this split, which is sort of why they came third and got 3-0'd by DFM. But based on CFO's performance, there could be an angle where CFO dropped the ball, but I don't think you'd be expecting it. I think it should be a 2-0, but with the chance for some excitement. I mean, the LJL teams always bring something unique, which is always fun to watch.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I'm gonna go for Oyster there. I think they've just looked quite consistent. They've looked quite strong. Like looking at their stats, they know how to play the game. I think maybe 1 or 2 rough games isn't a definer of a series, right? You know what I mean? So I think that's why I was like that one loss from GZ to like for Bliss, like that's not a definer for the team. So it's like I can see that. But okay, the final one, GZ versus JT. How's that going to be playing out for you?
That should be the most fun of the first rounds. I think Ground Zero ultimately, they stack up into J Team perfectly. Because when I look at Ground Zero, their strengths lie, at least from what I can observe, between the top and the jungle. I think Schönfire, as well as Tien, especially this split, has been extremely dominant over all of their competition. And it just so happens that J Team's weak points are Lakai and Lava, who are the top and jungle on the other team. So I think if we can use our advantages as Ground Zero against the weaknesses of J Team, there can be a lot of advantages found. I guess, caveat to that is Lemus has been very consistent. But Chi-Chi has been very dominant. So when J-Team win, it's Chi-Chi and Inso or Yurasan, whichever the two play in that support position, that have been carrying the game, and they've looked very, very good when doing it. So I think, ultimately, if Lemus plays how he did in the LCO, should be completely fine. But if he's making mistakes, that is where things can really quickly topple down for Ground Zero. That being said, I expect him to remain consistent, which is why I go in thinking Ground Zero probably should win. The other factor in this matchup is Phyto versus Minji. Now, Minji traditionally has been a very, very good mid laner. This split, not so much. The patch is coming in, though, before the next set of playoff games, which means there might be some angles for the melee mid laners, which Minji does excel at. And I would be very worried for Fido, because even in the grand finals, right, there was games where Fido found himself solo killed 3 times and still ended up winning the game. If you come over to the PCS and do that, you're probably not going to be able to win. The advantage garnered from mid will extend to jungle, to top, to bottom, and you kind of get rolled over like that. So I think it's very important that Lemus stays as consistent as he has. I think if he does that, he's on a winning path. Top jungle, they shouldn't really have to worry about too much. They're already sizing up like they should be the better 2 duo in those particular roles. But I think Phyto, he can't make the mistakes he made in the playoffs against Bliss, because he will just pretty much lose his team the game solo if that does happen.
Yeah, look, honestly, I think you took the words right out of my mouth, and I'm super excited for this. So, funnily enough, I've got a little surprise for you as well. So, I have been confirmed I actually have co-stream rights. So, I'm going to be watching all these
Oh,
games, streaming a lot of them. I think there are some other things in the work that I won't divulge just yet. There's some other cool things in the work, so don't worry. We're going to get as many people watching you as possible because we want to start spreading that love to PCS too, so you guys get all the love that we have. So, things are in the works, mate. I'll be watching,
awesome.
put on a big show. I'll be messaging you being like, that player's trash. And you'll be like, Pike, fuck off. Like, I'm mid-cast. I'll be like, nah, man, he's trash.
Right, trust me, you'll hear it. There are times where me and Lo can say nothing but call a play trash when it is just so inconceivably bad. It's like, that kind of sucked. Do you remember, by the way, just real quick, on this exact note, it's very topical to what you're talking about. Do you remember C9 Blabber flashing to steal a Scuttle Crab and then just dying?
Yeah.
Casa did exactly that twice in one game. It was the most revolting thing, and they lost the game on the spot when that happened. It was like I remember seeing it. Lo was the first one to comment. He was like, Jesus Christ. He audibly, like, there was no other words. It was just like absolute stun lock. This is a guy who wins LPL and he's flashing to just int. It was unreal.
He wanted it, man. It's necessary some days.
Don't ask a jungle their opinion on a Scuttle Crab. I'll tell you that for free.
No, they will give you a very long-winded answer and you'll be upset by the end of it. A tear may be shed. You never know. It's possible. Junglers are mean in my games, and I'm pretty low elo, and let's not even worry about that.
Yeah, mate.
Let's just
Scuttle Crabs decide the game.
Now, okay, I want to. You mentioned Low. I'd love to get like your talking points. You guys have been casting this split. He's fairly new to the whole show as well as a caster. How have you found that? Have you been sort of training him up as your experience has grown?
I mean, he joined somewhat midway through last split, and I think the growth that he's had between then and now is phenomenal, honestly. Like the difference between his original first cast when he came over here versus now, it's night and day. And I'm very, very proud to be able to sit here next to him, day in, day out, and cast the PCS, because ultimately I think that he very much complements what I do. Basically, we're very different in how we vocalize ourselves and talk, and I think honestly it makes for a very good yin and yang, I guess is a good way to put it, right? Is like, it's really nice when I'm coming off a hype play and like he comes in loud and then just slows it down and gets back to calming until something else happens. And so I think when he first came in, it would often he'd come in very light, very, very slow and just like, new to it. And so did I. So did everyone when they first started. But now, I mean, he's just really picked it up, and I'm very, very happy with what he does. We talk about what each other can do better between games. Ricky as well, he gives us a lot of advice when it comes to what he thinks sounds good, because ultimately you'd know this as well. When you're in the middle of casting, it's very hard for you to actually know what the show sounds like, because all you're doing is like having a discussion about a game you love, watching some people you really support. It's very hard to actually know what the content sounds like. And so Ricky, he's able, like, very, very good guidance for us if we're making mistakes or if he thinks something should change. He'll tell us, we will take it on board. The very next game, we'll make sure to implement it. And so I think with Ricky's guidance, both Lo and myself have been able to grow. And I think, I'm very, very happy with sort of the progress Lo has made, and makes me proud to be able to be next to him.
Oh, mate, you keep warming my heart too much. If you do it anymore, I'm probably going to catch fire. It's just too much for me. But no, I love that. I think it's so important to have good people around you. Same with like Ricky and stuff, like good staff that are looking after the show for you and helping you progress. That's so important. I think, especially for especially like LCO had the staff that we had and all the people that were so dedicated. You could see it. I think you could probably feel it in the cast too, and you can feel it in PCS as well, where there is that love and the passion, and you see it from all facets. It's not just the casters who are giving it; it is the people behind the scenes that are boosting you up to make it look better too. So I think it's such a crucial thing, and I think it's something that not only like OS and PCS does really well, but I think a lot of smaller regions do, is because we don't have the huge resources or the big backings. We're just like, all right, we're powering off a lot of love right now. How much love and passion can we give it? And it usually comes up with some pretty big numbers and stuff too. So it just warms my heart to see, man. I love hearing that. So I'm excited to see how PCS evolves, how LCO and everything as well, LJL, VCS, they all evolve as we start to grow and pull each other up as well. Now, I want to talk about you back again. We literally went from you to out, and now we're coming back to you. It's a nice little...
All right.
See how we do that? It's called
it's
strategic
cool.
planning. It's what I do. Even though I wrote all
It's
of my
not what I
questions.
do, so I'm glad one of us does.
Like, I want to know, what are your goals? Like, what would you like to achieve in your esports journey?
Ultimately, I guess my goal is, I mean, the underlying goal is to just continue doing the best that I do. You know, that's just a general goal. I think it's what you'd have. It's what every single person that does it would have, because ultimately, why are you doing it if you're not trying to do the best? But I guess a sort of more materialistic goal, and it's something I very much hope to achieve, is I'd really love to actually be able to cast a major region. And with APAC becoming a major region, I hope I'm, at the forefront of being able to be a part of that. I've put my heart and soul into what I've done the past 2 years. It's not been necessarily an easy thing to do. There's been a lot of trying times, and no matter what sort of has come up, I've made sure to persevere, and I'm hoping that sort of going forward, it leads into opportunities in this APAC league, because ultimately there's nothing I love more than right now telling the stories of the players in the PCS who, for the Western audience, doesn't really get told that well. I'm kind of the point to be able to tell it in a sort of way. I guess I'm like, the first person to be able to say it. I'm the public face of the PCS in many ways, and so I love telling the stories of our players that we have right now. And then as the region grows into this APAC, if I'm there, I'd love nothing more than to be able to tell the stories of everyone that joins into the ecosystem.
It's awesome, man. I think that's the big thing for like all like the smaller regions as well. As we all have dreams of going to a major region and moving on to bigger and better things, but it's also great to never forget where you are currently as well. I think that's a big thing that I've learned on my journey. Is it's just sometimes you just got to sit back and enjoy that you are in a good spot where you are too. You can dream of big things, you can hope for bigger stages, but I loved going on show every night, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm on the LCO tonight. I was like, and I remember maybe 2-3 years ago, I was waking up being like, I'm gonna be on the LCO one day. I'd be watching LCO. I'm like, I'm gonna be there, man. Like, and it's such a big realization. I think again, it leads me into my next sort of part is, what advice would you give people who would like to get to your position? Like, if you're moving up in the world and someone wants to go into PCS, for instance, as a caster, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess the main thing is make sure if it's League of Legends, whatever game it is, you're actively passionate about it. It's not something like where you kind of lie to yourself, where you're like, yeah, I want to do something that's like esports, and I think you got to be passionate to what facet of esports that you are passionate about. And I think if you're passionate about casting, then you kind of just have to start talking about the game a lot. Just whenever you're free, if you're, playing games, if you're in Discord watching your friends' game, just discuss it. Don't have mean, hard discussion. Generally discuss it. Talk about what's happening and talk about how the games are looking, what's the meta like, what this pro team looks like, who you think's going to win worlds. Just actively work on talking about it, because I think the easiest thing I found coming into the casting position was I already talked a lot about League of Legends. So coming into the cast was just, I'm talking about League of Legends, this time with a camera. And it didn't really feel all that much different. It took a little bit of getting used to the things like looking at the camera or knowing when to sit right and not fidget, or, just little things like that. But ultimately, if you're already actively talking a lot about League of Legends, it doesn't really feel like you're doing anything different when the camera's on you and you're talking about League of Legends in front of an audience. I think it's a pretty easy transition to make, as long as it's something you're already actively incorporating into your sort of day-to-day life as a hobby or whatnot. Because this ultimately will never really result in being a career if it's not already a hobby of yours in many ways.
Yeah. I think it's one of those very niche roles, right? Like, it's how many professional level casters, let's use League of Legends as the base example. How many professional full-time casters are there? I could probably name you like 20 or 30 worldwide that are like full-time casters. Like, that is just their job. So it's like, it is that hurdle and that jump, right? Like, you need to put in hours. Like, again, I mentioned that it took me 3 years to get to where I am. It's like, that's hours that I put in. And it's really funny. And I want to sort of take a side tangent into maybe a little bit of a darker, but not so super dark side, but it's like haters. So like those people that are out there that are like, no, you're shit and all that sort of stuff. I think my advice, if I'm giving it to anyone about wanting to grow, is don't actually listen to anyone else. Like, obviously listen to the people that are in the position or are helping you get there. But if you have haters, people are saying like, don't do it, like it's not worth it, why are you wasting your time? it's like you said, if you don't have the passion for it and you don't have that drive or the grit or the skills that you want to learn, it's actually going to be really hard to succeed. And I think that's
Yeah.
such a big thing. If you're not dedicated and pushing yourself every day, like you said, you're researching, you're already talking about the game, so it's easier in that sense. You're talking about how you get ready, you prep, you're making sure you're running over teams. Like I'm exactly the same. Like you have to sort of live and breathe it if you want to get anywhere. And at the same time, like we are in both very good spots, but we're not at the pinnacle either. We're still
That's right.
sitting a little bit lower than where we both probably like to be. So it's like, how do we go from here to there when that jump is so big? But then people are looking at the jump from amateur to where we are now is like, oh, it's not much. We're just like, it's a big jump. So I think, what's your take on that? Like, I guess let's talk about haters and maybe like the thought process of what it's like to be in esports and have people constantly criticizing you for what you do.
Yeah, I think ultimately in a position like we're in, I don't think if people hating on you actively impacts your ability to perform, it's going to be very hard to get into any sort of position, right? Like I couldn't come onto the camera every night if I get off camera, someone said something bad about one of the team fights I cast or a bit of analysis I had. If it really impacted me to the point where it like hindered my performance, I wouldn't be able to do this day in and day out. So you have to have some level of ability to just shrug off what some people say, because at the end of the day, you're not going to make everyone happy. Like right now, there's a lot I could improve on. I'm not Captain Flowers, but I'm doing my damnedest to improve to get to a position similar. Like I don't know if I'll ever be at the level Captain Flowers is at, but you know, I want to keep improving. That's what I aspire to eventually get to, and I think I'm doing a lot to improve. And as long as you can look at yourself, see that you're improving, if your peers alongside you look at you and say, man, you're doing really well, which is, you know, like something I've said to you before, is like, you know, you get recognized by people that are actively your peers. You know, when you tell me that I'd had a good cast, I feel really good about it. If someone random like Jack Bob 37 in Twitch chat said that I did something shit, it's like, what the fuck does that guy matter? Like, who cares, bro? It's just some like random bronze dude that's in my Twitch chat. It's like, who cares? Like, whatever, man. Like, you're not going to make everyone happy. As long as your peers that know what you're doing, if they think you're doing well, then awesome. You're doing a good job. That's all you really need to know. As long as you know you're improving, sweet. Everything's all good then.
That's literally exactly it. You literally just need to have a bit of a tough skin some days. And I think, like, even as like a Twitch streamer, when I do that and I'm back doing that as well, like, it's such a... If you just get hit with constant negativity, it can wear down on you, but I think you got to realize that words don't have power unless you give them power. And I think as casters, we know that better than anyone else because we literally deal with words. Our job is to say words and make you feel something. So I think we know the power of words. So I think when people come in and they're trying to use them for a negative intent, when we're so used to giving it for a positive intent, you sort of like, your words don't actually mean anything. So you can go eat a dick. Haven't said that to anyone yet on a cast, but that's okay. Probably avoid that.
Yeah,
but no, I think
something. I mean, people know they should. You know, that's the main thing.
Yeah, they're aware. At least they know. That's fine. But no, I think that's the big thing. And I think, I guess I wanted to talk about this because you're at a different tier to me as well. Like you're a caster. I'm just the host at the moment. And I do have dreams of going further and bigger with my own stuff too. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on how you feel about criticism and stuff. And you gave a really good answer. And I think it shows a higher level, not only of intelligence, but emotional maturity too. Because at the end of the day, if you keep getting salty about people talking shit about you doing your job, like, that's on them. Doesn't really change who you are or what you're doing. So it's like, I think that's just a message I wanted to get across, and I wanted to hear it from you too. And I think that's a big thing that I'm trying to take on is we need to start putting a bit more positivity out into the world rather than trying to pull in all this sort of negative shit that's been going on. So again, I just wanted to end on that and just have a bit of a thought. But Ben, we do have just a little bit more time, not too much time. I don't want to hold you too much longer. You are well late into the evening, and I feel terrible for holding you back. But is there anything you'd like to say? Any advice or any thoughts or feelings you'd love to give the people out there, OS, the world, PCS, anyone at all, a message of anything?
Yeah, I think like ahead of the playoffs that are coming up, I kind of would like to speak on the fact I'm in a pretty unique situation, right, where I am the caster for the PCS, one of the casters for the PCS, so I have a very, very passionate feeling towards these teams. I want to see them succeed. I'd love to see them in international competition. But I'm also from Oceania. I'm from New Zealand. I grew up supporting Oceanic solo queue, as well as obviously the competitive play. I remember was it Worlds or MSI where King was stealing Barons as AD carries.
Yeah.
I remember all these hype moments. I remember back in the old days, Radier playing AD carry with big swips on Lulu top. Like, I've been in the Oceanic scene for a long time. And one thing I'd really like to get out there, I think, ahead of these playoffs is, especially like for any region, it'd be LJL, PCS or whatever, is if, the team you're supporting doesn't do well, I think you should still continue to support the other teams in the ecosystem, and especially now more than ever, that all of them are going to be coming together next split.
Yes.
Next year, it's no longer individuals, we're all one region, and it's something that I think we really want to... I try to, what is the word? Promote that, I suppose. I try to promote the fact that we're in the PCS. It sucks to see an LCO team eliminated. I also feel it when an LCO team gets eliminated. It's very disheartening for me as well. It's the region I play in. It represents my skill level when I play solo queue. And so I think it's like the important part is realizing, you know what, they're not losing to shit teams. It's not like we've just gone and got eliminated by a shit team. The PCS teams are bloody legit. These teams are practicing against LPL. They're practicing against LCK. There's honor in losing to these teams. There's more honor in winning to these teams. And I think that's a very important note to touch on as well, because if you are an LCO fan, an Oceanic fan, this is truly the first time, and I believe this truly, that we will see an LCO team beat a PCS team, because that Ground Zero versus J Team matchup, that has all the correct pieces for Ground Zero, and you're certainly not going to want to miss that, because I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that it is a Ground Zero win.
Look, you know what? You took the words out of my mouth. I think my goal for my position too is why the reason I do these interviews as well, Vestion, is I want to start bringing people together. It's about bringing new voices and new experiences together, all culminating into one beautiful and absolutely driven community that is like Oceania. And now, so it's called APAC. Can we name it something cooler?
Yes.
Can we call it something like the Islands or something? Because they're all kind of islands, right? Japan's an island. Vietnam.
Yeah, Taiwan's an island.
Look, we could call ourselves the Island Boys.
Oh, no, not that one. There's an already bad connotation around that name. Let's not go with that one.
Like, we got to come up with a new name.
But yeah,
like APAC.
They are naming it something else. I'm not sure what it is, but it was on their announcement that it's not going to be called APAC. That's just like the placeholder of Asia Pacific. Easy to call it APAC.
We can come up with a name. We'll come up with something.
Yeah. Yeah, Apex's just too generic, right? Every single game does APAC. Valorant does APAC. Apex Legends does APAC. It's like, come on, new name.
Yeah, let's try.
LEC's cool. They've got a cool name. Let's do something like that.
Yeah. I think islands. Something with islands or beach bums. I don't know. We'll come up with something.
We could have a little funky one, a little playful one ourselves.
Like we're all just we're just chilling. We're just catching waves, man. It's fine.
That's right.
Okay, well, this does bring us towards the end, but we have one final game for you because we like to end on a game to lift the mood again.
Right.
This one, I've had to change the name because I don't know when I'm going to get the chance to buy you a drink, if that's what you choose to go for. So it used to be called Pub or Sub. I'm now calling it Lightning Round. So basically, the premise is I've got 20 seconds on the clock. I'm going to start the timer for you. Your goal is to answer as many questions as possible. If you answer them all correctly, that usually it would be, I'd buy you a beer, or I'll give you a sub to my Twitch channel. I can't do either of those, so you don't get a prize for this one. It's the first one without a prize. I feel terrible about it, but we get to have some laughs.
That's all good.
Now,
yeah,
that's
what I'm here for.
That's right. Now, what's my topic going to be? Ooh. Let's go with meta League of Legends, sort of like within the region. So the current meta of League of Legends is so I'm going to sort of hit you with questions relating to that. We'll start the 20-second timer after I've asked the first question. Are you ready, Ben?
Sure. I'm ready.
In 3, 2, 1. What is going to be the most played champion in PCS playoffs?
Lucian.
Why Lucian?
It's just picked a lot of the time in the mid lane right now. It's a blue side first pick traditionally.
Who is the best player in the playoffs for PCS?
Oh, Ginger. Junja for PSG Talon.
What do you think is going to be the most banned champion?
Most banned champion. Ashe, maybe?
Probably Ashe. That is your timer. It's not long, 20 seconds, but you know what? I was chuffed with those answers, Ben. Very happy with those, mate. Thank you so much. Who was that who did you say was the best player?
Junja. He's the jungler for PSG Talon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sadly that answer is on because it's Shernfire, by the way, but that's okay.
Oh,
we
my
won't worry
bad.
about that.
Damn.
That's fine. You're so close.
Oh, shucks.
Funnily enough, I made these questions up. But mate, thank you so much for coming on, dude. We've been talking about doing this for so long, and we finally got to do it. It's so good to have you on and just have a good chat and figure out who you are so we can shed some more light on you and PCS and whatever APAC's going to be called. The island. But mate, thank you again. Big shout out to you and the PCS guys. Guys, don't forget to go check out the playoffs that are coming up next week. We've got so many games coming up. LCO is going to be in it. LJL is going to be in it. PCS, of course, is going to be in it. And our boy Vestion right there is going to be the one leading the charge for you all as we finally see Oceania and LCO make it to Worlds. I'm calling it. I'm standing strong. Ben, thank you so much again. Have a fantastic night, and I'll talk to you real soon, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.